Yeah, we're not doctors or giving any medical advice. This show is intended for educational purposes only, and you should talk to your doctor about any medical issues. Now, let's get at it.
Welcome to Chat the Fat, where nutrition authors Nissa Gron and TC Hale are going to break down common low-carb mistakes. Let's chat all things low-carb, keto, digestion, and more so you can maximize your results.
Hello, good people, and welcome back to Chat the Fat. You came back because you wanted to hear episode 9. I'm TC Hale, and I'm here with the ever-lovely Nissa Gron. Nissa, what's shaking?
I am doing well today. How are you?
I'm pretty good. I've reached the age, apparently, and level of dadness that I don't care about my appearance anymore because I have started cutting my own hair. Like,
Oh,
right? Like I take clippers and I buzz it, and I can't be bothered with driving to get my hair cut and have the guys, like my hair cutter guy, he can't talk and cut hair at the same time. Like, what's the matter with you? How long have you been doing this? So if he starts to tell me a story, he stops and he just tells me the story for 15 minutes. I'm like, I gotta go. So I'm done. I'm cutting it myself, but I don't, the back might not be even. I don't even have Sarah check it. I don't even care because I think once you become a parent, you just have all this other stuff. I'm done. I'm signing up to be a dad.
You didn't think to try a new hairstylist?
I thought about that once, but I'm like, then I got to explain to somebody new how I want it. I'm done. I'm checking out. So I'm buzzing it. After I'm done, I'm like, it's shorter. Nailed it. So that's where I'm going now. That's probably not the topic for today though, right?
No, that's not the topic. Today we are going to talk about some keto myths because there are a lot of them out there.
Yeah, there's like a heap and helping of them. So we'll see if we can dispel some. Maybe we'll start some new ones. That would be cool.
Hopefully not. Then people might not follow along.
If you watch Alf while you're eating fat bombs, you'll lose 13 pounds that week.
All right. Well, no one can probably find Elf, so no one can disprove that myth.
Right.
Awesome.
We're setting new standards.
All right. So a lot of people make ketogenic diets far too complicated, while others don't make them complicated enough. And there are some basic rules that you do need to follow in order to get into nutritional ketosis and to also find success on a keto diet. But there are many myths that are perpetuated that a lot of ketoers believe to be absolute truths. So today we are going to discuss some of the myths floating around about keto that could be keeping you stuck. Now, some of these myths are really easy to dispel with maybe just a few statements, while other myths we may need full episodes to talk you off the mythical keto ledge.
Yeah, and some of the myths are just horrible, but some of them I don't mind so much. So maybe we'll talk about which ones that I'm fine with people believing that for a few minutes or maybe not.
That'll be interesting.
Right.
Well, the first myth, I think, is one of the biggest myths in keto land. And that is you must eat less than 20 grams of carbs in order to get into ketosis. So some people can actually eat more than 20 carbs. So if you are only under 20 carbs and that's it, and you stop and that's what you feel like you need to do in order to be in ketosis, just know that there are people that eat more than 20 grams of carbs and they're still in ketosis and they still see results.
Right. And this is definitely one that's extremely false, but one aspect to look at it is if you really have low blood pressure, you might need to eat a little more carbs while you kind of transition a little slower and fix some accessing nutrients a little bit better first. But beyond that, I don't mind somebody believing this for a few minutes because so many people they just feel like, oh, I just have to lower my carbs. And the fact is they've been eating 7,000 carbs a day. So when they cut it down to 3,500 carbs a day, they're like, oh, I'm doing low carb, so I should be in ketosis now. But you definitely don't want to have everybody just saying, okay, I'm going to go under 20 grams of carbs because it's not going to be right for a lot of people.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people that will freak out. Maybe they're having a good day and then they look at their macro counts and they realize I'm at 25 grams of carbs. Now I'm not going to lose any weight. And so we don't want people like that to freak out either
I
and
just
ruin
have
their
to
whole
sit on
day.
my doorstep and wait for the keto police to show up.
They will. They'll come. It's also interesting to note. So for me personally, I think we talked about this last week, I can eat 20 to 30 grams of carbs and I'll still see weight loss, even if I go sometimes past 30, sometimes even up to 40 or 50, as long as I'm staying active. Um, and if I just want to stay in ketosis, like say I'm at my goal weight, I don't have any weight to lose, I've actually eaten closer to 80 or 100 grams of carbs, and I'm still in ketosis on a blood monitor. I probably won't see weight loss at that level, but I'll still have all the benefits that come along with ketosis, at least on a blood monitor.
Yeah, and what's a great way to understand that that number is really going to vary from person to person is to look at how you can do that now and still be in ketosis, but you know that when you started, you wouldn't have been able to do that. You wouldn't have been able to eat that many carbs and be in ketosis when you were leaning a lot more insulin resistant.
Yeah, definitely not. It definitely took time to work up to that. So definitely stay with the 20 to 30 or whatever is right for you until you get maybe closer to your goal or you do some work on your insulin. And then you can test out adding a little bit more each time to see where your threshold is. And thankfully, the longer you do this, the easier it is to get back into ketosis. So if you accidentally eat too many and get knocked out, you'll have an easier time getting back in.
Right. So having a goal of, 20 carbs a day, I think it's fine just to have that goal kind of in your head as a range to be near. Um, but you're going to have to figure out what works with you. You might be at 20 grams of carbs per day and be insane. Like you could be a mental person. So we don't want that either. But also, the more you get into ketosis, the more you can start testing out, hey, I bet I can try a little bit more and see how that goes.
Yes. So the next myth sounds a lot like myth number one, but it is different. So there are people out there who believe that you only need to eat less than 20 grams of carbs in order to get into ketosis. So a lot of people believe that if you want to attain nutritional ketosis, you have to eat under 20 grams of carbs per day, and that's it. You're automatically in ketosis. So, I mean, if that were the case, we probably wouldn't have much of a podcast.
Right. It would just be we would help you count your carbs. It kind of seems like all the myths are around 20 grams of carbs. Is that what we're looking at? Or is this the 20 grams of carb myth show?
No, just the first two. We're
Okay.
good.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. But yeah, for a lot of people, there's going to be a lot of steps. Let's look at some of where those steps might be.
So there are, and a lot of people are going to try to talk you out of this, but this is a keto truth. There are a lot of people that once they lower their carbs to around 20 per day, they need to raise their fat substantially in order to even get into ketosis.
Right.
And there's a lot of people out there that tell you, no, you don't need to eat more fat. You have fat on your body to burn. And everyone knows that I don't like it when people say that because that's not always the truth for everybody. Another thing to look at is your protein. For some people, they can eat protein and they'll stay in ketosis and they're fine. But for other people who maybe are more insulin resistant, they have to moderate their protein in order to stay in ketosis.
Or even to get into it in the first place. Yeah.
Yeah, to get into it, to stay into it, they have to eat moderate levels of protein. Otherwise, they won't even see ketosis. And then there's also other lifestyle factors like lowering your stress or having better quality of sleep. A lot of times, if someone's walking around too stressed out from even just dieting too hard, or they're stressed out because they're not able to sleep at night, that alone, even if everything else is perfect, can keep them out of ketosis.
And you know what about stress is, because I can remember hearing about this, before I really knew anything, and just hearing like, okay, don't be stressed. Yeah, thank you very much. But you kind of need to understand what's happening, that there's science behind why we're saying to simmer down a little bit, because that stress to your body is that you are running from a lion. You're about to die and be eaten by a lion, and that's how your body views the stress that you're experiencing when you're, stuck in traffic, kind of thing. So in that situation, the body is going to make more glucose that you can use for fuel immediately to run away from the lion. So you really have to find ways to simmer down now. And even if you're not stressed, but your like blood pressure is so low and your resources are so low, your body is stressed, and your body will still create those same stress hormones and have similar reactions with raising glucose levels. All those things can happen if your body is in a stress situation. So you got to find ways to calm down if your life is stressed, and you got to find ways to increase the resources that your body has if your resources are low and your body is stressed.
And a lot of people just associate that with life stress, like children or work or things like that. But it's also dieting stress. If you're stressed out because you thought you went over 20 grams of carbs and now you're
Right.
out of ketosis, like
Right.
that kind of stress counts too, because then
Mhm.
you're freaking out over that and worrying about that. And that can kick you out of ketosis more than eating more than 20 grams of carbs might.
Right. So just calm down.
De-stress, yes. And then, so there's other things like removing trigger foods. So a lot of the trigger foods might include things like dairy. A lot of people might have issues with nuts or even with artificial sweeteners, even the kind that a lot of keto experts promote, like stevia or swerve. A lot of foods like that can keep people out of ketosis, and they may
Right.
not realize it.
Right. And so if you're, not everybody needs to remove all those foods when they first start, but if you're having frustrations and things aren't going the way that you want them to, remove all those things and get it to where things are working. And then you can test out, okay, what can I add back in? And if you add it back in and things don't go well, you need to avoid those things.
And if you like those foods, no one wants to take them out. They just don't. But it changes the game for a lot of people, just removing some of those things if you're sensitive to it. So don't feel sorry for yourself that you need to take it out. Sometimes you just have to do it.
Yeah, removing foods that you don't want to is really about that first week that you do it. That's really all it is, because you're going to miss it during that first week and you're going to be like, oh man, I really want some Nutter Butters. It's been a week, kind of things. But what you're really after is results. And when the results get you excited enough that you like those results more than you do whatever it is you left out, it gets better. So after the first week, it's pretty easy, but it's just a matter of getting past that first week.
It's somewhat easy. I don't know if I would say it's pretty easy.
Right. Well,
Cheese
it
is
really
good.
does depend on mineral levels. Yeah. Because when minerals are low, nothing you remove is easy. Everything is going to be torture. So
Yeah.
lifting mineral levels can help a lot of things.
And speaking of things you like to talk about, also the way that your body processes fats can also keep you out of ketosis.
Yeah. Because you could be really jacking up the fat levels, but if your body can't access those fats and use them correctly, then your body is still saying, how come we don't have enough fats coming in? And the fats that are coming in are just turning toxic and rancid and causing trouble. So you really want to make sure bile is flowing correctly. And we've done a few episodes on fats, I think, that people can go back and listen to. Just go to chatthefat.com and look at our list of previous episodes by clicking the button over on the right corner about previous episodes. You can find the ones where we've talked about fat, and we'll list them in the show notes page too.
Okay. Now we are on to myth number 3, and I think this is a big one as well. Excessive cardio is necessary in order to get into ketosis. So I used to believe that, maybe not about ketosis, but more about losing weight. But there are a lot of people that believe you need to do all the cardio in order to get into ketosis. But there's actually a lot of people who successfully follow keto and they never add exercise at all.
Right. And before, years ago, Nissa and I never did a podcast together because we couldn't schedule it around the time she was spending on her elliptical.
Pretty much that's what I did with my life, and I got nowhere.
Right.
So it is true that some cardio, especially if it's fasted cardio, can help build up ketones, but just know that it isn't absolutely necessary. So maybe if you're using that as an excuse not to get started because you're not ready for exercise, just start, because it's not really that effective with helping you lose weight, and it's not necessary in order to get into ketosis.
And, when we're saying fasted cardio, I really like, in this situation, cardio that is easy. I
Yes.
don't want it to be hard, because if you're doing something that's difficult, you're stressing your body, and you might be moving into a more anaerobic type exercise, which your body is not going to burn fat as much doing that. It's going to want glucose and glycogen to burn. So I really like easy, just walking. And what's great is that, this can not only help somebody get into a deeper state of ketosis, but in the same way that a person may need to increase their fat intake when they lower carbs to get into ketosis, because increasing the fat intake is kind of letting the body know, look, the fat is coming in. So we can burn stored fat because we're getting the fats that we need. So you're kind of jump starting the situation. Same thing with easy walking while you're fasted, is that's a state when your body is very capable of accessing fat for fuel, and you're kind of jump starting the situation, saying, hey, go ahead and use some stored fat for fuel. And the body says, oh, this is great, this is working out, maybe I'll even do this the rest of the day too. So I find that a lot of people will, if they're in enough of a state of ketosis that they can fast through breakfast without stressing their body out and raising glucose levels, that if they can do that, that a fasted easy walk will often result in them seeing higher ketone numbers later on that evening. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. And I agree with you. I used to be the cardio queen. And once we moved to Arizona, I took it down to mostly walking. And I definitely saw higher ketones like that, and also improved results once I stopped exercising so much and just
Right.
started walking.
Yeah. There's a sweet spot, there's a good place where you're doing some exercise, but not over exercising to the point of stressing your body out.
Yeah. And I think it's also important to note that while strength training is great for improved health, it's also not necessary for you to get results from keto. But with that being said, being in ketosis can actually help you get better results with strength training. So you might have to do it less often to get the same kind of results.
Right. And doing it less often it's kind of fun. It's kind of fun to not have to spend all your time working out.
Yeah. And then you kind of touch on this, but the excessive or intense workouts, maybe you think that they're helping you lose weight or get into ketosis, but they can even sometimes restrict results for some people.
Right. So I find that uh, there's more of a forgiving zone for overexercising with low carb than there is with keto,
Yeah.
because keto relies a little bit more on you not stressing your body out to the point where it's going to jack up glucose levels and make its own blood sugar.
Yeah. We don't want that. All right. So myth number 4, registering ketones on a monitor like a Keto Mojo actually automatically means that you are going to lose weight. So we definitely need to let people know that you can be in ketosis, you can show blood ketones, and that doesn't mean that you'll automatically lose weight. You can definitely, see ketones 1, 2, whatever it is on that monitor, but you don't want to depend only on that monitor to say, oh, I'm in ketosis, so I must be losing weight. I think that they're great for tracking purposes, but they're definitely not the only measure that you want to use for weight loss. And then also there's some people who follow keto for a long time, maybe for, months or years, and they're actually using ketones so efficiently that they might not even show ketones at all, or they're going to show very low because their body's using those ketones efficiently as fuel. So their readings come out low. So while using those meters are great for tracking and for learning about yourself, it doesn't automatically mean that you're losing weight just because you're showing that you're in ketosis.
Right. Another thing to think about too is that, you have to make sure that you're eating enough fat on a ketogenic diet. But let's say that you're doing well, but and your blood ketone meter is showing that you're in ketosis, but after dinner you ate 12 fat bombs. So you're probably not going to lose weight with the 12 fat bomb plan, because your body is much better at burning fat for fuel right now, but you're cramming more fat in there than you need to. So your body is going to say, oh, well, look at all this fuel coming in. I'll just burn this instead of this stored stuff. And since I'm getting so much more fuel than what I need, why don't I store some of this for later in case this dude runs out of fat bombs? So yeah, what do you think about that, Nessa? How do you explain that to people?
Well, I think fat bombs are great tools, but you're right. 12 of them all at once, you're going to get a stomach ache. You're not going to feel good. And so you definitely don't want to eat 12 all at once, but maybe if you're still hungry and you have one fat bomb, maybe two fat bombs, you probably will be okay.
Right, right. So just don't view that ketone number as the magical thing, because you still have to do other things right to actually see the weight loss.
Yeah. All right. So number 5 is
We totally demystified that myth.
um, number 5 is you must monitor calories in order to be successful on keto. So eating low calorie on keto might work for some people, especially at the beginning, because these people are still following calories in versus calories out, and it's not necessarily a ketogenic diet. So a lot of these people that are following this method eventually stall out, just like the people who follow calories in versus calories out, because their body's not getting enough fat coming in order to continue to see progress. So
Right.
if you're registering ketones on a low calorie diet like that, they may be starvation ketones, which, maybe you think a ketone's a ketone, but starvation ketones aren't desirable long term, since you're training your body how to survive on less nutrients. And, just surviving isn't necessarily thriving. So you definitely want to train your body to survive on more nutrients so you can continue to see success.
And remember, some of these myths, I'm fine with people believing them initially, but this is not one of those. Just stop it.
No.
Just stop it. Stop
Yeah.
doing low calorie keto. Stop doing
Yeah.
low calorie anything.
But a lot of people get confused because they're so used to tracking calories, um, whether, it's mainstream diets. So they come to keto and they think that they have to track calories in order to see success. Like, what would you tell those people what they should do then?
So I find that I, I find that if it's a person that I'm seeing in person, that I have to put my hands on their shoulders and just shake them.
Shake
Just
them.
for a minute. If you just shake them for a minute, then they tend to like, oh, I should listen to this, because man, it's been a long time that we've been doing this, and it's ingrained in people for a long time. I think you had to go to like torture sessions or something to get it out of your head, or
Yeah, I think if you shook me, I would tell you, okay, because I didn't want to be tortured. So I'd say, okay, I'm not going to do it, but I would have still counted calories.
right. Maybe some people are thinking, wow, I probably burned 6 calories just by being shaken like that.
That was actually my first thought. Like, are you just shaking him to help him burn more calories?
Yeah. Yeah. So, it's really about, and I talk about this a lot in all my weight loss books. It's not that the calorie doesn't matter at all. It's not that, your body is going to get calories from this food and it's going to burn calories during the day. It's just that it happens differently for every person. And you thinking that you can count that and that what you're counting is going to bring the results is just 100% false, because the way they measure calories has nothing to do with human physiology. So if you were a petri dish, counting calories would work excellent. It would work perfectly, but you're a person, and so it just doesn't. So using something, like a chronometer or something, looking at your macros and stuff like that is great. And people do even benefit when they first start counting calories, because in order to do that, you have to pay attention to what you eat. You have to be conscious of what you're eating, and not realize, oh, wow, I had 17 Mountain Dews today. I didn't know that I drink 17 Mountain Dews in a day. So all of those can be beneficial, but anybody who thinks that they're going to get the right results by getting those numbers correctly just fails every single time.
Yeah, and especially if they're shooting for a low number and then they just get too hungry, and then, instead of hitting that low number, they just go way overboard. But instead of going way overboard with all the fat, they start bringing back in the junk processed food and all the carbs, because now their brain is so crazy from restricting calories for so long that they'll just eat anything they can find.
Right. And there's a truth to that, kind of having a deficit of something so that your body needs to pull it from your own fat stores. That's just like we talked about in not eating 12 fat bombs. That kind of statement agrees with the calorie thing. But it's not just about creating a deficit, because if you create the wrong deficit, now instead of burning fat for fuel, your body's going to be storing fat because it's in this emergency freaking out mode, because the deficit is severe.
Yeah. All right. So myth number 6 is people can't stay on keto long term. So you'll especially hear about this in the media. You'll see stories about it probably every week. And just know that Weight Watchers is probably putting out those stories if you read them. But the media is going to tell you that keto is not sustainable long term. But there are a lot of people out there, myself included, who find great success following keto long term. So I've been doing it since around 2015. 4 years, I would consider that pretty long term.
Yeah, that's pretty long term. And I had a 5 to 6 year stretch where I literally did not eat a carb. And I had a coconut yummy with every single meal, every single day. And so I didn't really know I was very keto. This was a long time ago, but um, I've thrived in that whole time. And people, were trying to tell me this information was not as common then. And more people were on the bandwagon of if you don't have carbs, you're dead by Thursday. But what I do like about this myth and why it's probably going to stick around is because for some people it's true. And for some people who may already be dealing with imbalances that keto has the ability to make worse, then they'll find that, over a long period of time, they're not doing as well. And it's likely because they have made an imbalance much worse than it was. But we teach people how to look for those imbalances. And if you see those imbalances coming on, then we show you how to take steps to improve those imbalances. And then you're not making yourself worse. And then you could keto for a much longer period of time without having those imbalances create problems later on. Because people will do keto for years and then they'll have a problem start coming up. And it's because of one of these imbalances that when they stop doing keto, the imbalance goes away because they used carbs to correct that imbalance instead of other measures that they could do. Does that make sense? So they could have taken other steps to fix that imbalance, but instead they used carbs to fix the imbalance. So they
Yeah.
fixed the problem, but then they gained 30 pounds because now they're eating carbs. So they're like, I wish I could do keto, but I just can't. No, it's just that you don't understand what's going on with your physiology. And if you fix that, you'd be fine.
So improving those imbalances can help along with improving their digestion. So that way their body can actually run on the fuel that they're giving it long term.
Right.
And then I think it's good to note here, especially since we talked about this a little bit last week, that there are people who maybe go on and off keto. It's not like once you become keto, you can't ever get off. Like you're able to take breaks and still maintain results with a low carb diet in between. But sometimes cycling through periods of keto on and off, that's someone's long-term strategy in order to maintain their weight loss results and receive the same health benefits, where they're not always striving for ketosis, but they're still living somewhat of a low carb lifestyle in between. So that way they're not going back to all the carbs and, undoing all the good that they did for themselves.
Right. And I'm one of those people. And that's kind of how, over the last decade, that's kind of how I've done it. And I used to think that I needed to do that because of things that I had heard that were typically probably the foundation of where this myth came from. But now that I understand those things better, I know that I don't need to go in and out as often. Like I used to do it I used to do keto maybe 6 months at a time, and then I might have carbs for a few months, but I don't do it anymore. I think it's probably been this year that I haven't been doing that. And now instead I do it to where if an imbalance is I tend to be too catabolic, if you've heard of talk about that before. So if I was going too far catabolic, I would just start eating some carbs for a little bit. Now I just use other methods to fix that. And I use my cycling off time when I feel like, hey, I'm going on vacation. I'm just going to kind of do what I want. And it kind of magnifies the fun of vacation by, I'm going to eat ice cream and see what happens to me when I do that, just to make myself into a lab rat.
Yeah, I'm very much the same way when I go on vacation. Like I say I'm going to do well and I'm going to keep my carbs lower, but it never works, especially, when we're rushing from place to place with kids, trying to find something they'll eat. it just never happens. So I'm kind of curious to see what happens on this low carb cruise when
Right.
everyone's eating low carb and I'm looking at the ice cream and the other stuff.
Right. And my assumption is that I'll probably stay keto in the beginning of it, just because it's kind of a long cruise. I don't
Yeah.
want to eat cupcakes for 8 days. But then maybe towards the end, I'll just go into vacation mode. But it'll be fun because, I've done that on vacation lots of times, or Christmas holidays around family and stuff like that. But we'll be around everybody low carbs. I bet that we get yelled at or slapped or something like that if we eat a chicken sandwich.
Hopefully not. We'll just be eating our meals and hiding.
Right. But but what I like is, with the knowledge that I have now, is that I know that, um, if I do that for a few days, that I get right back to where I was as soon as I start doing the way that I really like to eat again.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people that can maybe go off for a week. Like when we go to Chicago every year, I usually can avoid some of the good Chicago foods that I love that have carbs. So I come back and I get right back on keto and it's fine. But there's a lot of people out there that aren't at that level. And maybe they'll go on vacation for a week and, go off low carb or keto, and then they don't know how to get back on, and they just kind of spiral out of control and lose all their progress. So if you're one of those people, then stick with it and, don't go off of keto until you know that you're in more control than that.
And one thing that makes it easy for me, and I don't think this has to be right for everybody, is that I don't do the 1 day off keto thing. Like I don't, if I go to a party or something like that, or I'm just out for a dinner, like I know ahead of time if I'm going to be sticking to my diet or not. I never go off if I didn't know I was going to do that ahead of time. And that, for me mentally, just makes it easier for me because, when people have the ability in their head to just have what they call a cheat meal or whatever they want to do, then every meal they have to battle that. Is this going to be a meal that I'm going to do it, or is it not? So I kind of do it. And I found some other people that really struggled with this found that they did better if they just said, okay, I'm going to have none. I'm going to have none of the wrong thing. And then it makes every meal an easy decision. And all of a sudden, instead of enjoying one bad food from time to time, they enjoyed a lot more not having to have that battle in their own brain every day. And so I
Yeah.
find that I just do better if I just always eat the way that I know makes me feel good, unless I'm going to plan on a few days or a week or a couple of weeks or something where I'm just going to go kind of nuts.
And that's definitely a good tactic, especially for people who are still at the beginning, because, if you have that cheat meal to keep you on plan, but you're trying to get into ketosis, having a cheat meal once or twice a week means that you'll pretty much never be in ketosis because you'll just always be fighting to get back in. So if that's what you're striving for, definitely wait until you're further down the road in order to have meals like that
Right.
occasionally.
Once you're more fat adapted, you can recover much quickly and it won't. But if somebody's just trying to start a keto diet and they're starting to try to get into ketosis, having a cheat meal once a week is going to make you fail on that. Again, I just want to say that I don't think everybody needs to do it that way, the way that I do it. Some people do great with a cheat meal every once in a while, and that helps them actually succeed more. But I've just seen some people that trick of doing none helps a lot.
Yeah. So myth number 6 was people can't stay on keto long term. Myth number 7 is they take it even further and they tell you that keto is dangerous for long-term weight management.
Dun, 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 dun.
I was thinking that in my head.
Mm-hmm.
So there is no such thing as an essential carb. You probably have heard that before. So if you choose to cut carbs long term, you're actually not missing anything that your body requires to function long term. And
Right, and there are bodily functions that need glucose to happen, but your body is good at making what it needs, and it can pull that from protein, other sources. So that doesn't mean you need to consume it.
yeah, there's other ways to get it, especially in your brain. But keto can actually be ideal for long-term weight management. So for a lot of people that go keto and then they lose the weight, they get to their goal, they're excited to be there. If these people just go back to a diet that's filled with too many carbs after they hit their goal weight, it's just going to result in to the dreaded yo-yo dieting effect that obviously no one wants.
Right. And I think a lot of people could lose, a very large amount of weight, and then they could just kind of maintain that doing low carb. And a lot of people will succeed that way. But I think a lot of people find that they just like the lifestyle that keto can give them. And once you get your groove on, it's just a much easier way to do it. And you get to include more things that are delicious. So I think a lot of people find that they want to do it longer term than that.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people go into keto for the weight loss benefits because obviously they want to lose all the weight yesterday. But once they really get started, they see how great they feel and they see some of the health benefits that come from it. And so they actually stick with keto long term because of the health benefits.
Right. What I just don't want to see people do is I want to lose 150 pounds on keto and then go back to eating the way that I did my whole life, because you're going to gain 180 pounds.
Yes.
It's just, if you're not doing something that you can sustain long term, then that's not so great, because you're just going to create more of the yo-yo can be violent when it comes back. It can come back in a violent way.
Yes.
So the main thing is that you don't have to stay keto forever, but you are going to have to watch what you're doing with carbs if carbs is what got you to where you were.
Yep, all of that damage can come back if you go back to eating Doritos and even lean cuisines for every meal. It's all
Right.
junk
Right.
carbs.
Yeah.
All right, so myth number 8, without eating carbs, keto will cause fatigue. So the media a lot of time uses that short period of potential keto flu as a reason not to follow keto. You'll see lots of articles out there warning you against it because they say that you're going to feel awful after you're following it for a week or two. But if you're worried about that, if you haven't started yet and you're worried about that, there are many steps you can take in order to lessen the keto flu or even avoid it altogether. But even if you do eventually get the keto flu, just know that it's a temporary state that only lasts for a few days for many people. So don't let the media scare you away from keto, because you might not have as much energy as you did for a few days.
Right. So if you are having fatigue on keto, then you might be in that no man's land kind of thing, where you're not having any carbs and you're not eating in a way that's allowing you to get in a good state of ketosis where your body can use that fuel. You might be kind of stuck in between and not really having a fuel source. So yeah, you're going to be fatigued. But if you take the steps to get into a good groove, then that's going to be gone, and you might even have more energy. A lot of people end up having more energy. As far as those keto flu symptoms, all the other ones that go along with that fatigue, we like to see people avoid that by, taking steps to make sure digestion is working correctly and that you have enough minerals in the system and all those things. Because why do you want to do that if it's not that fun?
And I think if you do stay in a prolonged period of keto flu, that's one way of knowing that you're probably not in ketosis. And that's where that blood monitor we talked about earlier will come in handy. So, you don't want to, maybe you're not losing weight just because you're in ketosis with the blood ketones. But if you never make it into ketosis in the first place, then you're going to stay stuck in this period where you just don't feel well.
Right.
Also in episode 4, we talked about this and we had a download that walks you through how to get through keto flu. So you can still get that at chatthefat.com/episode 4.
Right. Cool.
All right. So myth number 9 is keto is dangerous if you have diabetes. So first off, neither of us are doctors, but keto has actually been shown to be one of the best approaches in order to help control type 2 diabetes.
Well, also, type 2 diabetes is dangerous if you
Yeah.
have type 2 diabetes. So everything can be dangerous if you have diabetes.
Yeah, but the carb restriction actually helps manage the blood sugar in diabetics. So even though like the Diabetes Association will tell you that you should be eating all the fruit and all the whole wheat carbs, that's not necessarily going to help you if you have type 2 diabetes. So I personally had fasted blood sugars of around 130 to 140 before I began eating low carb as a lifestyle. And my fasted blood sugars actually came down to the low to mid 90s after only a few months of low carb, and they continued to do even better as I entered into a keto plan. So for those people who are saying that you should avoid keto if you have type 2 diabetes, I think that I'm living proof that it could actually help you reverse the stages.
Right. And that just, this myth comes from the people who think that diabetes is caused by consuming, fats. There's a group of people out there. Um, I think they're nicknamed dunce group or something like that. I can't remember the exact term they use, but um, maybe it's bucket of idiots. I'm not sure what it is, but they just view it as that fats are clogging up the receptors, and so that you become insulin resistant. And it's just absolute fiction. And what you want to look at when you're a type 2 diabetic, and this is my viewpoint on all diets, is that I don't want people using a diet that consists of a food that they can't process correctly. So we've talked a lot of times about how we don't want people to go on keto if they can't process fats correctly, because the diet consists of predominantly fat. So you want to take the steps to correct that first. Same with diabetes, especially type 2 diabetes, is your cells are no longer receptive to that glucose. So any carbs that you're consuming, you're just creating a burden for your body to deal with. You're not giving your body fuel because your body can't use that fuel. So you're just creating a burden. So that means that you need a diet that doesn't include those carbs. Well, guess what? It's either going to be low carb or ketogenic. That's pretty much your only option. Low carb is going to be very beneficial because you're going to reduce your carbs greatly, which means you're greatly reducing the burden you're giving to your body. But keto takes away most of the carbs, which means you're taking away most of the burden that you're putting on your body and allowing your cells time that maybe they will at some point again be more receptive to the carbs and the glucose, and you may be able to eat more carbs later at some point, like
And
Nissa can now.
yes, I can. And it's great. So we keep specifying type 2 diabetes. What about the type 1 diabetics? I know that I've heard of many people that, started eating keto even with type 1 diabetes and they're thriving. Do you have any feelings about that?
I have warm feelings about that.
That's good.
It just makes me feel warm and cuddly. Uh, yeah, I think that type 1 is a lot more about understanding what's going on and managing the amount of carbs that are coming in at once. So if a person can eat no carbs on a ketogenic diet, then they reduce the odds of creating those spikes that are very problematic with type 1 diabetes. And then the person using too much insulin and creating the huge crash, which is very problematic in type 1 diabetes. So that's really about, they really have to understand how much insulin do they need to use with the amount of carbs they're eating. So if you're removing most of those carbs, to me, it just seems like you're making the formula easier to manage for yourself.
Yeah, I was at
Because,
a party once and I saw someone who I knew was type 1 diabetic injecting himself with lots of insulin and then go grab a big plate of cookies and down those cookies. Probably not a great health choice.
right, it's not, but he knows that if he didn't eat those cookies, he was probably going to pass out after that injection. So, he had learned how much he needs for this specific time. So I think that, plate of cookies is a hard calculation to guesstimate when you're used to just eating like maybe a slice of bread. But so when you remove all those carbs, the window for error is going to be smaller because you're going to be used to using a much smaller amount of insulin. That's just my opinion on why people are succeeding with type 1 diabetes with it.
Yeah, and so even obviously with type 1, you need to be a little bit more careful. But with type 2, there's a lot of people who actually come off their medications once they go on a ketogenic diet or even low carb diet with their doctor's supervision, of course. You don't just want to come off your medication because you feel like it. But they were supervised and they ate a low carb or ketogenic diet and they were able to come off medications that they thought they would have to be on for the rest of their lives.
Right. And we've seen a lot of those people in our Facebook support group for the Kick It Naturally books and podcasts and stuff. Over the years, we've seen a lot of people come in there that have experienced just that because they have been removing the burden that was making the body not be able to deal with what's going on.
Yeah, I personally never was on any diabetes medication, although I did have gestational diabetes for my first pregnancy, which required insulin, which was awful. And I was so nervous that I would need it the second pregnancy, especially since I was older. I think they called it a geriatric pregnancy. So thankfully I
Nice.
was older, but I was eating better.
You
And
automatically get an AARP card when that happens, I think.
yeah, I saw advanced maternal age on the paperwork, and I was a little shocked by that. And so I asked them about it, and they said it used to be geriatric pregnancy over 35, which is crazy. But anyway, the point is, I had my geriatric pregnancy, and I did not require insulin the second time around because I did my own research and I went against the diet that the dietitian and the doctor recommended. They were recommending all the junk carbs and things like that that weren't helpful for me. But
Right.
I, went low carb and that helped.
Right.
All right. So myth number 10 is keto will raise your cholesterol. So I know this one confuses a lot of people. Keto can raise cholesterol in some people, but it's typically the HDL cholesterol, or what some people call it the good cholesterol, and that will go up. And keto also can raise LDL levels in some people, which is referred to as the bad cholesterol. But in this instance, it's really the size of the cholesterol particle that matters, not always the amount.
Yeah, if this is a thing that concerns you a lot, then Jimmy Moore's book, Cholesterol Clarity, can be really helpful to help you kind of understand what's really going on there. He had a lot of doctors who specialize in this area come in and help him out with the book and contribute. And he was on episode 3 of Chat the Fat. If you want to hear him, he's a lot of fun. But this is a lot of this confusion is can be magnified, where if someone says, oh, I'm going to go keto, but they're still eating a lot of carbs, and they just think that jacking up their fat levels is going to make them keto. And then that can be very problematic when you're still eating the levels of carbs that's telling your body to do other things with fats, like store them. That's where a lot of the problems can come with. So if you're really doing keto, then most people see that the basic trouble from their cholesterol improves, because it's the inflammation from high insulin levels that's really causing a lot of the major cholesterol problems that most people are experiencing today.
All right. Well, we just cleared up a lot of keto myths, but we still have way more keto myths to go. So I think we're definitely going to have to make this a 2-part episode and talk more keto myths next week.
Yeah, I didn't think we had a good chance of fitting all these in on one episode.
There's a lot, and I'm sure we're still missing some. So if anyone knows of anything we missed by the time we finish next week's episode, definitely let us know. But we do want to get you some good information. So we have an episode download for this week, and that is going to be my 10 favorite fat bombs. And that is basically just combating the myth that we talked about, number 5, which is low-calorie keto is a good idea. It's not. So you can take some of these delicious fat bombs and add more fat to your diet, but just don't eat 12 all at once. Not a good idea.
Yeah, no baker dozen fat bombs.
All right. And so we also have a listener question to get to. And this one comes from Erica from Pleasant Prairie, Wisconsin. And she said that I would love to know more about how sustainable a keto diet is long term.
We already talked about that. Were you not paying attention, Erica? I guess you asked that question before this came out. Yeah. So, what are the things that you feel in this are maybe some of the biggest contributing factors in making it easy for you to do long-term, or that's making it successful for you long-term?
Definitely what I learned from you about the digestion part, because I tried keto and low carb diets for years and they never stuck past a few weeks, maybe a few months tops. I always went back to craving all the junk food that I ate before because my body was still crying out for those carbs. It didn't really understand how to process the fat very well, or even protein. So I would say definitely fixing up digestion with the supplements that we've talked about, that definitely helped me. And also making the changes more gradual over time. It just made it become more of a lifestyle for me instead of just another diet that I was trying.
Right. And I think that when, like we talk about just getting in a good groove and having some good foods that you really like and recipes that are good, it just makes it easier and it makes it enjoyable to the point that that's easy to sustain. Enjoyment is easy to sustain if you didn't know.
Yeah, and once you learn how to make the foods that taste really good, you probably won't even miss the carbs at all. I know when I took a long break from carbs and then I finally went back and had a piece of bread, it actually tasted a little bit like cardboard to me, which was
Oh,
strange.
interesting.
Not that I ever
Right.
ate cardboard, but I
Uh-huh.
imagine that's what it would taste like.
Well, if I ever have anything like processed junk food, candy, kind of sugar things, it's very kind of to
Yeah,
me. I can't do it.
very sweet. Yeah, I feel that way about milk chocolate. Now that I eat dark chocolate a lot, if I can't even eat the milk chocolate at all.
Oh, really? Cool.
Yeah, not at all. All right, so we also have a product review, and this week we're actually going to talk about an app because I know a lot of people have questions about apps. And so the one that we are going to talk about is, I don't know if it said chronometer or chronometer. What do you
I would
think?
say chronometer with a caveat that I have no idea if that's right.
Okay, so sorry if you are the maker of chronometer or chronometer, one of us is saying it wrong.
Right.
Um, but this is basically a tracking app, so kind of like MyFitnessPal or one of those where you can put in the foods and log as you go. And I think that it's definitely important to have one of those apps, especially at the beginning. And the reason for that is because if you're only eating 20 or 30 grams of carbs per day, it adds up pretty quickly. And if you're not tracking it in an app like that, which makes it really easy, then there's a good chance that you're going to go over your carbs and you'll probably have no idea.
And it's also really great to see the percentage of the macros just to get an idea of what's going on. And I don't use mine anymore, but when I first started wanting to see kind of what the percentages are, it helped me get an idea of, oh, eating like that, I am hitting a good percentage of the fat compared to carbs and protein. And that helped make it a lot easier for me. So I think a lot of people starting out, it can be great to kind of do that in the beginning to see that, because you can feel like, oh, I'm not really having any carbs and I'm having a good percentage of fat. But when you really look at the numbers, you're like, oh, I guess it wasn't as good as I thought.
Yeah, and there's a lot of different tracking apps out there. So if you like something different, you can use that. But the reason that I like this one is because it's very keto specific. So if you look at the metrics, it has metrics to track your ketones, whether it's blood ketones or however you're tracking. It also has other metrics, like if you're tracking your waist, because obviously we don't always agree with what the scale has to say. So it's especially helpful at the beginning, just like you. I don't really use it every day now. But when I first started, I did use it because I needed to figure out where I felt best. And that was definitely a
Right.
tool that I used that helped me. And so like once I did it for a while, maybe I didn't need to use it as often. But it was really cool to look back and see like, the day before, what did I eat if my ketones were low? Or, what did I eat where my ketones were high? Or, things like that helped me learn what was working best for me.
Right. Yeah. So I'm all for it. I give it an A plus. I guess we don't really score them, do we?
No, we haven't. I guess we
Okay.
could start, but I don't know.
Nah, that seems like a hassle.
Okay.
But to find it, you just look up chronometer or chronometer, either one of those. No, you just go to the app store and you'll just find it in there. It's easy to find.
You can also find it on the internet because I've used it online as well.
All right. Yeah. Okay. We'll put links in the show notes too, so you can find it that way.
Okay.
I think I'm out of words. I think I said them all.
Until next week when we talk about the other myths.
Right. So next week we'll cover the rest of them and we'll do a part 2 of this episode.
All right.
Okay. We'll see you guys then.
Bye.
Whether you're brand new to keto or just looking to move past roadblocks, join us for our next Troubleshooting Keto Master Workshop. Go to chatthefat.com/workshop to find upcoming dates and register for this totally free event. You just might find your missing piece of the puzzle. Until then, we'll see you next week on Chat the Fat.